I mean, the documentary really documents my rise to fame from 70 to 75 at Dodger Stadium, culminating at Dodger Stadium.
And it's been an incredible ride. Everything he did, he pulled off. You know, the film, the book, the streaming, the Rocket Hour programs, and the tour.
Would you believe that the rock legend, who sold over 300 million records, almost never made it? Elton John, known for his chart-topping hits and unforgettable performances, was fighting demons behind the scenes, demons that nearly destroyed his career. Yet, despite the chaos, there was one thing that kept him going. Now, at 77, Elton reveals the secret to his decades of success. It's a story of resilience, redemption, and a commitment that most never see. Elton John was born on March 25, 1947, in a small town called Pinner in Middlesex, England. Back then, his name wasn't Elton, it was Reginald Kenneth Dwight. He grew up in a modest house with his mother, Sheila, and his grandparents. His parents weren't married when he was born, which wasn't very common at the time. They didn't get married until he was 6 years old. His father, Stanley Dwight, worked in the Royal Air Force and wasn't around much. From a very young age, Reginald showed an incredible talent for music. When he was just 4 years old, he started playing the piano. By the time he was 7, he could hear a song once or twice and then play it perfectly. Everyone who saw him play was amazed. When he was 11 years old, he got a scholarship to the Royal Academy of Music, one of the best music schools in London. Every Saturday, he would take a bus from his small town to the big city to attend his classes. But even though he was clearly gifted, he didn't enjoy it as much as people thought. He often skipped lessons and wandered around the city instead. Still, his talent was so strong that he could get away with it. His teachers called him a genius, even though he wasn't the most disciplined student. At 15, Reginald made his first big move toward becoming a musician. He started a band called Bluesology with his neighbor, Stu Brown. They mostly played R&B covers, and Reginald quickly realized he loved performing. By the time he was 18, the band became good enough to back up famous soul singers like the Isley Brothers and Patti LaBelle. It was an exciting time, and Reginald decided to quit his boring office job to focus on music. In 1967, something important happened. Liberty Records placed an ad in New Musical Express, NME, looking for new talent. Two young men, Bernie Taupin and Reginald Dwight, noticed it. Neither of them actually got picked in the auditions, but something incredible happened anyway. Reg, who would later be known as Elton John, told Ray Williams that he could write music but couldn't come up with lyrics. Williams handed him a sealed envelope filled with Bernie's poems. Reg read those poems on his way home, sitting on the London Underground. He couldn't believe how powerful Bernie's words were. A few days later, they met for the first time at a small cafe near Oxford Street. They bonded quickly over tea and scones, talking about music and their dreams. Neither of them knew it yet, but they had just started a partnership that would last over 50 years and create some of the greatest songs in history. Only a few weeks after meeting, in July 1967, they wrote their first song together. It was called Scarecrow. They recorded it in a tiny, cramped studio owned by Dick James Music. Scarecrow was never officially released, but it meant a lot to both of them. By 1968, the duo was officially working as songwriters at Dick James Music. Bernie would show up early every morning with his notebook, ready to write. Elton came in around noon, often wearing flashy clothes that made everyone stop and stare. Their process was simple, but amazing. Bernie wrote the words, and Elton turned them into music, sometimes in just 15 minutes. On one incredibly productive day, they managed to finish 7 songs in less than 9 hours. But success didn't come quickly. Their songs were rejected again and again. and they even used fake names to avoid flooding the market with their real ones. Around this time, Reg began changing his name. He picked Elton from Elton Dean, a saxophonist he admired, and John from Long John Baldry, a singer he looked up to. Later, he added Hercules as a joke, inspired by a horse on a British TV show. The change became official in January 1972. The 1970s were their golden years. Their first big hit, Your Song, came together in just 20 minutes, while Elton was having breakfast at his parents' house. Released in October 1970, it became a huge success, reaching the top 10 in both the UK and the US. After that, they couldn't be stopped. Between 1972 and 1975, he did something no one else had ever done. He had 7 albums in a row reach #1 on the US charts. It started with Honky Chateau in 1972 and kept going with albums like Goodbye Yellow Brick Road and Captain Fantastic and The Brown Dirt Cowboy. Each album was packed with hit songs, and fans couldn't get enough. Goodbye Yellow Brick Road was especially impressive because it was a double album with 17 tracks, including some of Elton's most famous songs. By 1975, his album Captain Fantastic and The Brown Dirt Cowboy made history as the first album ever to debut at #1 on the US charts. It showed just how much fans loved and trusted his music. Elton didn't just dominate the album charts, he was everywhere on the singles charts too. During this same period, he had 16 songs reach the top 10 in the US, including his first #1 single, Crocodile Rock. His music was so popular that it seemed like every time you turned on the radio, you'd hear one of his songs. This incredible success made Elton the biggest pop star of the 1970s. What made Elton even more unique were his live performances. He didn't just sing, he turned every concert into a spectacle. A big part of this was his wild and creative costumes. One of his most famous looks was in 1975 at Dodger Stadium, where he wore a sparkling Dodgers baseball uniform covered in rhinestones. It was fun, over the top, and exactly what fans loved about him. Another famous outfit came in 1980 when he performed in Central Park, dressed as Donald Duck. The costume was so big and awkward that he could barely walk or sit, but the crowd loved it. Elton always made sure his shows were unforgettable. Meanwhile, Elton also fought a long, dark battle with addiction that nearly cost him everything. It started in 1974 when his manager, John Reed, introduced him to cocaine. At first, Elton thought the drug made him more confident and helped him open up to others, but soon it took over his life. By 1975, he was using cocaine regularly, and things kept getting worse. For the next 16 years, the addiction controlled him. In the 1980s, Elton's cocaine use was out of control. He was reportedly taking a gram every 10 minutes at his worst. The drugs started to take a toll on his health. He suffered from seizures and heart problems. In 1983, during a concert at Wembley Stadium, he collapsed on stage because of a cocaine-induced seizure. Even that didn't stop him. He continued using drugs for another 7 years. Alcohol made things even worse. Elton began drinking vodka early in the morning, sometimes as early as 10 a.m. At his peak, he was drinking up to 50 vodka martinis a day. The mix of alcohol and cocaine made him unpredictable and reckless. One time in 1989, while staying at a hotel in Australia, he shouted at his staff to stop the wind outside his room. These outbursts showed how deeply his addictions had affected his mind. As if drugs and alcohol weren't enough, Elton was also struggling with bulimia. For 6 years, from 1984 to 1990, he fought an endless cycle of binge eating and purging. He would eat massive amounts of food, sometimes as many as 20 ice cream sundaes in one sitting, and then force himself to throw up. This secret struggle added another layer to his self-destruction, making his health even worse. Elton's addictions also damaged his relationships. In 1984, during a particularly bad period, he suddenly decided to marry Renate Blauel. It was a decision fueled by drugs, and it didn't last. The marriage ended in divorce 4 years later. His relationship with his mother also fell apart during this time. Once close, they became estranged as Elton's behavior became more erratic. There were many moments when Elton came dangerously close to dying. In 1987, he needed throat surgery to remove nodules from his vocal cords. Even then, he kept using cocaine, ignoring doctors' warnings. In 1989, he overdosed on cocaine at his home and had to be rushed to the hospital. The scariest moment came in 1990, when he was found barely breathing, with his heart racing at 300 beats per minute. He was on the edge of death. That final brush with death changed everything. Elton realized he couldn't go on like this. On July 29, 1990, at the age of 43, he checked into a hospital in Chicago to get help. It wasn't like anything he'd experienced before. He had to make his own bed, wash his clothes, and live without the comforts of fame. It was tough, and at first, he wanted to leave. Twice, he packed his bags and sat crying on the sidewalk, ready to give up. But deep down, he knew he couldn't go back to his old life. Staying meant pain, but leaving could mean death. So, he stayed. Slowly, he started to see a way forward. While in rehab, Elton joined Alcoholics Anonymous AA. This group became a lifeline for him, offering support and a sense of community. When he left rehab, he kept going to AA meetings week after week. Even decades later, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Elton attended online AA meetings every Sunday. He called them a lifesaver and credited them with helping him stay sober through difficult times. Getting sober didn't just save Elton's life, it also gave him the strength to help others. He became a mentor to celebrities battling addiction, earning the nickname the Sober Sheriff of Hollywood. When rapper Eminem struggled with drugs, Elton stepped in. He gave him his phone number, checked in regularly, and offered support. He did the same for fashion designer Donatella Versace, organizing an intervention when she needed it most. Elton didn't just talk about helping, he took action. In 2020, Elton celebrated 30 years of sobriety. He shared the moment with fans, posting a photo of his AA coin and gifts from his family. He admitted that, even now, he sometimes dreams about cocaine. But instead of pulling him back, those dreams remind him of how far he's come. They strengthen his commitment to stay clean. Elton John's career took a huge turn in 1994 when he started working with Disney. He teamed up with lyricist Tim Rice to create songs for The Lion King. This wasn't just any animated movie. It became one of Disney's most famous films. Elton's songs like Circle of Life, Hakuna Matata, and Can You Feel the Love Tonight became instant classics. Can You Feel the Love Tonight was so popular that it won an Oscar and a Grammy. People loved the Lion King soundtrack. It stayed at the top of the charts for 9 weeks and sold over 15 million copies. Elton's music was now loved by kids and adults alike, making him a star for a whole new generation. But Elton didn't stop there. In 1997, The Lion King became a Broadway show. It won 6 Tony Awards, including Best Musical, and became the highest-grossing Broadway show ever. After that, Elton worked on another musical, Aida, in 2000. That show also won big awards, including a Tony and a Grammy. Then, in 2005, Elton created Billy Elliot. The musical based on the movie about a boy chasing his dreams. Elton said the story reminded him of his own life, which made the project very personal to him. The show was a massive hit, winning 10 Tony Awards and becoming one of his most celebrated works. Elton proved that he could succeed with all kinds of stories and teams, showing his incredible talent and adaptability. In 2004, Elton started a Las Vegas residency called The Red Piano. It was supposed to last for 75 shows, but fans loved it so much that it ran for 6 years, with 247 performances. The show wasn't just about the music. It was a full-blown spectacle with amazing visuals created by photographer David LaChapelle. The residency made nearly $170 million and set a new standard for Las Vegas entertainment. Because of Elton's success, other big stars like Cher and Bette Midler followed in his footsteps, creating their own long-term shows in Las Vegas. In 2018, Elton announced his farewell tour, calling it Farewell Yellow Brick Road. This was his way of saying goodbye to touring while celebrating his incredible career. The tour was massive, with 330 shows all around the world. Despite delays caused by the pandemic, Elton stayed committed to his fans. The tour made nearly $1 billion, becoming one of the most successful tours of all time. One of the most special moments came in 2023, when Elton performed at the Glastonbury Festival. Over 120,000 people watched him live, and 7.3 million more tuned in on TV, breaking records. Elton John is one of the most successful musicians ever. He's sold over 300 million records, which is as many as the entire population of the United States. For 30 years in a row, from 1970 to 2000, he had at least one song on the Billboard Hot 100 every year. No one else has done that, not even Elvis Presley. In the UK, he went even further. He's had top 10 hits in 6 different decades. His song Candle in the Wind 1997, written as a tribute to Princess Diana, became the best-selling single ever, with over 33 million copies sold. That one song alone outsold the entire music industry in some countries that year. If all his records were stacked up, they'd reach 570 miles high, more than twice as high as the International Space Station. Elton's Grammy success shows just how special his music is. He's been nominated 34 times and has won 5 Grammys. His first win was in 1987 for the song That's What Friends Are For, which also raised millions for AIDS research. In 2001, he was given the Grammy Legend Award, an honor only a few artists have ever received. His nominations started way back in 1971 with Your Song, and his most recent win was in 2022 for his duet with Dua Lipa, Cold Heart. Interestingly, he's won Grammys in 4 decades but didn't win any in the 1970s, even though that was one of his most famous periods. 3 of his albums have also been added to the Grammy Hall of Fame, proving how timeless his music is. In 2024, Elton achieved something few people ever have. He became an EGOT winner. That means he's won an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony. It took him 37 years to achieve this, making it the second longest journey to EGOT status in history. He got his Emmy for a Disney Plus concert special, Elton John Live Farewell from Dodger Stadium. At 76, he's one of the oldest people to achieve this, earning the award shortly after having knee replacement surgery. His collection includes 2 Oscars for Best Original Song, Can You Feel the Love Tonight from The Lion King, and I'm Gonna Love Me Again from Rocketman, as well as a Tony for the musical Aida. His husband joked that after all the years Elton spent jumping off pianos in platform shoes, it's amazing he's still going strong. Elton was also inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1994 during his first year of eligibility. This is something only the most influential artists achieve. Axl Rose from Guns N' Roses introduced him at the ceremony, and together they performed The Bitch Is Back. By this time, Elton had already broken Elvis Presley's record for the most consecutive years with a song in the top 40. Early in his career, Elton joked that his popularity might fade and there would be an Elton John renaissance. But he never needed one. He stayed on top. Even after decades in music, Elton kept changing with the times. In 2021, he teamed up with pop star Dua Lipa for Cold Heart PNAU Remix, a mix of his old songs with a modern twist. It went to #1 in the UK, making him the first artist to have hits in 6 different decades. After 50 years in the industry, Elton showed he wasn't slowing down. Elton also loved helping others succeed. In 1974, he started Rocket Records to support new artists. One of his first successes was Kiki Dee's Don't Go Breaking My Heart, a duet with Elton that became his first UK #1. Elton didn't stop there. In 2018, he discovered Sam Fender, an unknown artist at the time, after hearing one of his songs on the radio. Elton's support helped launch Sam's career, and soon he was winning major awards. In 2021, Elton worked with Lil Nas X on One of Me. This unlikely partnership between a legendary rock star and a young rapper showed how open Elton was to new styles and ideas. Elton stayed relevant by connecting with people in unique ways. In 2018, a Christmas ad featuring Your Song told his life story and reached millions of viewers. During the COVID-19 pandemic, he hosted a virtual benefit concert from his home, raising over $10 million. And in 2023, his farewell tour, Farewell Yellow Brick Road, broke records, earning $939 million and drawing over 6 million fans. At 76, Elton proved he was still one of the biggest stars in the world. What kept Elton going was his incredible work ethic. In the 1970s, he released 10 albums in just 7 years, often writing and recording them in weeks. In 1974, he made Caribou in only 6 days during a break from touring. Even during the pandemic, at 73, Elton recorded The Lockdown Sessions, an album featuring 16 different artists. He never stopped pushing himself.